Hey, and welcome to another episode of Fast Forward, a podcast from QSR Magazine where we talk to the founders, innovators, and entrepreneurs at some of the world's most exciting fast casual restaurant concepts. My name is Sam Oches. I'm the editor of QSR Magazine and the editorial director of Food News Media. And on today's episode, we're talking to Brett Schulman. He's the CEO of Cava, an exciting Mediterranean fast casual that is really just exploding all over the country right now, has about 75 locations in the U.S., and is really redefining Mediterranean food for the American public. Cava has been around now for nearly a decade, founded in 2011. And, when it came out, it was really at the height of the excitement of fast casual. And everybody was really trying to, I think, replicate Chipotle in those days, trying to create this customizable model of bold flavors, especially more globally inspired foods. And Cava came out of the gate a little bit different than most. For starters, it was founded by three childhood friends with Greek heritage who had previously opened a full-service restaurant in Washington, D.C. called Cava Mezze. So it was a fast casual spinoff of a full-service restaurant, but then also they had experience in the CPG world. So they were packaging their dips and spreads for Whole Foods and other stores, and they were getting some brand exposure through that way. Then they had this sort of chef chops in terms of just this high-quality level of food, and then they were packaging that in a fast casual model that was very reminiscent of Chipotle in that you go down the line, you build your own meal, you pick a base of grains, greens, pita, you put on toppings, proteins, but of course this is not your average customizable build your own meal kind of fast casual experience in that it has ingredients that are not totally familiar to Americans. So when you talk about something like falafel and spicy lamb meatballs, harissa sauce, these are things that especially in 2011 I don't really think were certainly as familiar to most Americans, and now here we are 8 years later, and more people are discovering these flavors and ingredients thanks to brands like Cava. But Cava, beyond its food, I think is following. It's blazing its own trail. You talk about how it kind of has sort of that Chipotle vibe in terms of building their menu, but has really blazed its own trail in terms of its growth path. Launched in Washington, D.C., then jumped across the country and expanded into Los Angeles, and has since been really planting restaurants in all kinds of communities across the U.S. So for a restaurant brand that is as sort of urban, hip, modern as Cava is, they're entering smaller markets across the country as much as they are entering big urban centers as well. And I think they're really proving that this concept is something that works for Americans all over the country, not just young millennials that a lot of brands seem to be targeting today. But the other way that Cava is really blazing its own trail is in how it is sparking that growth. And I think something that was really interesting with this brand last year that caught a lot of people by surprise, or at least certainly grabbed the attention of a lot of folks in the industry, is with the help of Panera founder Ron Shaich, Cava went and acquired Zoes Kitchen. Of course, could be considered one of its chief rivals. Zoes Kitchen had grown to about 260 locations in the U.S., compared to Cava, which at the time was somewhere around 65, 70 locations. That got people's attention, and they acquired Zoes Kitchen for around $300 million, and so now they have all of this leverage and certainly the scale behind them to accomplish so much more in the U.S. when it comes to delivering authentic Mediterranean flavors to more Americans. Ron Shaich is now the chairman of the board for Cava, which is a coup for a brand of Cava's size, because that guy, he built Panera Bread into the titan of the industry that it is today. So Cava is just on this really incredible tear right now, opening restaurants, delivering authentic Mediterranean flavors to more Americans, and I think well on its way to becoming a very prominent fast casual brand in America and a household name as well. So I was really excited to sit down with CEO Brett Schulman in his office in Washington, D.C. to talk about that growth, talk about where Cava goes from here, what the Zoes Kitchen acquisition means for the brand, and all things Mediterranean flavors. So with that, we're going to roll into my conversation with Cava CEO Brett Schulman. Okay, I'm here with Brett Schulman, the CEO of Cava. Brett, thank you so much for sitting down today.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
So, Brett, let's take it back to the beginning of the early days of Cava, back when it was Cava Mezze Grill, and it was a spin-off of a full-service restaurant from the founders. I know that you kind of came on board, I think it was at the second location, is that right?
I came on board after right before the second full-service restaurant opened in Capitol Hill.
Gotcha. So the fast casual spin-off, what was that process like in thinking, we could do a fast casual version of what this full-service restaurant is doing?
I originally met the guys, was connected to the guys. Ted's cousin, a woman I went to college with, introduced us. And they, at the time, had needed help with a fledgling consumer packaged goods business. So they were making the dips and spreads that they served in the full-service restaurants, literally out of the back of the restaurants to start after the restaurants closed. And then with a customer who they had partnered with, got a small commercial commissary space. And we're making it out of there. They were in about 8 local Whole Foods, and the business was struggling a bit, and they asked me to come on board and help, first from a consulting standpoint, and then me and the guys hit it off and talked to me about coming on board full-time, and talked to the guys about taking what we do in full service and what we were doing in Whole Foods and said, what about bringing this to a larger audience in a health-based format?
Gotcha.
And Chef Dimitri got very excited and said, I've got this grill menu, but it's very much like the street food we would eat when we go back to Greece in the summers. But love the idea of leveraging the healthy aspects of the ingredients. And we spent about almost a year and a half, figuring out how the food would translate. Chef was working from a made-to-order format in the full-service restaurants to more of a cook-and-hold format in the assembly line format. And we opened our first in Bethesda in January of 2011.
Wow. So here you are 8 years later, incredible growth, lots of evolution, but at the same time, it feels like you guys really have stuck to the core of what came out of that original concept. So talk to me about, at that time, I think, this was when fast casual was really starting to take off back in 2011, sort of the heyday of lots of brands jumping into the space. It didn't feel like anything like Cava existed at the time. Is that right?
Yeah, we were very early on in the move to fast casual, and I think it was the idea of taking what the guys had started, their origins. The reason that they created that first full-service restaurant in Rockville, Maryland, was to bring the culinary and way of life of their upbringing and their heritage to a larger audience and put their modern perspective on it. The guys are all sons of Greek American immigrants, and so we're excited to bring that to a larger audience. And really the trends were taking hold of ingredients that were satisfying but yet healthy at the same time. And I think that's what's always been such a strength about what we're doing and staying true to the culinary is you're not stripping it down or dumbing it down to be better for you. So you can come in, you don't have to make any sacrifices, and you can walk out having eaten better and doing it with flavorful, what we like to call mind-blowing meals.
Yeah, sure. What was the status of Mediterranean food in general at that time? Because, the American palate has been evolving over the last 20, 25 years, and Mediterranean certainly is not. It's been around for a long, long time, but it feels like things really started to change about the time you guys got into the market. What was the impression on behalf of Americans of what Mediterranean food was?
I think it's a couple things. I think first and foremost, we don't necessarily look at Mediterranean as a bunch of countries on a map. We look at it more as a way of life, a way of being, and that kind of goes back to the core of the brand and the guy's culture and the origins. Ted likes to say Cava is a culture, not a concept.
Sure.
And then you marry that with a lot of the trends. You talked about the country's palates are changing. We're becoming a much more diverse country. And as diversity increases, you see people's palates getting more adventurous and being more interested in whether it's spicier foods or cuisines from other regions and just really looking and interested in trying other foods married with cuisine that they don't feel that they don't regret eating, that they feel good about eating, and that actually rewards them from a flavor standpoint as well.
Yeah. So when you guys launched Cava as a fast casual concept, the customization piece of this is so important, right? So when you walk down the line, you build your own Cava bowl. Why was that something that was important to you guys in developing the menu?
Yeah, it grew organically in the sense of the ingredients of Mediterranean, the ingredients of the heritage of the guys lends itself so well to be able to be customized to anybody's preferences. And you've seen the growth in people really looking to craft to a specific dietary need or even a dietary restriction, where our food allows you to do that without making compromises. So being able to put it in this customized format, first and foremost, you can build a meal to your personal preferences. And at the same time, with what Chef Dimitri's put together as a portfolio of ingredients for you to customize, it's hard to screw up your meal, right? Which is really important when you have these choices, to be able to know and have the confidence that you're going to make a good choice no matter what ingredients you choose that are right for you.
So I think that's interesting because, like, you think of Chipotle, for example, and you build your own meal, and black beans, this is something that Americans have known for forever, right? But Cava opens up and you've got spicy harissa, tzatziki. Those are things that are not as familiar. So what does that learning curve look like for customers?
Yeah, when you were saying that, harissa was the first one that came to mind. But it's been pretty incredible to see how much more people have come to know what harissa is, and how quickly that's. Whether it's because of the internet or access or social media, how quickly and how virally these trends can proliferate and people understand them. But I think the other thing we like to do is have our team members really educate you about them. And so it really forces us to have a culture of engagement and hospitality with our guests, and really help educate them and interact with them, so that we're very big in our technology, but we like to talk about using technology to enhance the human experience, not replace it. And this is just another opportunity for our team to create that human engagement with our guests.
What do you think was the moment when you really realized, oh wow, we have something really successful on our hands?
Yeah, I would say it was when we opened our 5th restaurant.
Okay.
It was about 2.5 years in after our first restaurant, and we had opened in a couple different neighborhoods in the DC area, and suburban, urban. We had a mall location, and the energy around that opening, and the energy we started to see really accelerate at all of our locations, and the lines of our community day. They were building every community day, but that 5th restaurant we opened, we did a lunch and a dinner service where we do our traditional community day, and free meal to introduce ourselves to the community, and recommend donations, not obligated, but go to our philanthropic partner. We partner with Learning Gardens, and just to see the lines around the entire development and the excitement around it, and then to see the people come back time and time again after that, we thought, wow, we're really filling a need for people.
Sure.
We're really doing a job for them, where people can walk into a Cava, not make those sacrifices, and walk out having eaten better.
Yeah. So when I think about my Cava experiences, I believe my very first Cava experience was with you across the street from where we currently are here in Chinatown. And I just remember being blown away by, it wasn't just the food, it was really, you guys have put together a package that feels incredibly modern and fresh. And when I think about it, I think of this popular term that's come up over the last couple of years, which is, lifestyle brand. This is something that kind of fits sort of the essence of the moment, I guess you could say. Why was that something that was so important to the branding and making this something really connecting with especially younger consumers?
Yeah, I think, again, it's true to the origins of our brand and why the guys made that first full service restaurant. It's why I joined the guys when they had asked me to join them full time, and I didn't tell them, and I went with my wife to the Capitol Hill restaurant and was just struck by the inclusivity of the dining room, how happy the team was to be working there, and really goes back to my earlier comment about how we think about Mediterranean being a way of life as much as a cuisine. And so really speaking to a lot of the values in our company. And so we've just tried to express that through our food, through our physical spaces, and now even through our digital experiences, where we can create those deeper, more meaningful connections, where people feel like having Cava as a co-pilot in their daily life is really helping to amplify and enhance the way they want to go about the way they live.
Yeah, sure. So at what point did you guys step on the pedal? I mean, because you realize you got a hit on your hands maybe 2.5 years in, and then when was it like, let's go?
Well, it's so interesting because after that 5th restaurant, we took a break for about 1.5 years, because we really wanted to understand where we were succeeding and where we maybe had opportunities for improvement, thinking about our operations, thinking about our team, thinking about how we did everything. So we took about a year and a half off, but then geared up. And the restaurant we ate at across the street, we opened as a group of 3 in the fall of 2014, and then started to really ramp up from that point on.
Gotcha. And what does that expansion process look like? I mean, did you first tap out sort of the DC metro area, or did you guys start to look sort of far and abroad for that growth?
We stayed focused on the DC area for the first few years, and then we made a bit counterintuitive move across the country,
right,
to California. we like to make things hard on ourselves, but wanted to really test the brand and what we were doing in a market that was pretty distant from our home market, and start to build that. And then we went to New York after that, and once we had started to establish some of the bigger market cities, knowing the success we were having in the suburbs in the DC area, we wanted to also pursue what we thought were great opportunities in some cities that were maybe a bit underserved with fast casual, healthier based, more adventurous cuisine. And when we were touring the country, looking at all these different cities, it was just so fascinating to see some of the amazing growth in some of these cities, as well as, people who were our customers in the existing cities we were in, living in these cities. And so that's where we started planning on going to cities we're in now, which is Charlotte and Austin, Texas, and Raleigh, Durham.
It's funny. I mean, as well as I do, I think most people listening, that East Coast and West Coast kind of feel like two different countries sometimes, right? Yeah. And I know that it must have been a little bit of a culture shock going out to LA, as silly as it sounds, but
yes.
That's the birthplace of better eating and certainly, local foods and all of that. And so what was that experience like opening in Southern California?
It was challenging, right? It was basically like creating a new business 3,000 miles from home. And in hindsight, it's really interesting, because I think it made us a lot better business and a lot more disciplined and a lot stronger, because it forced us to really think about how we were going to do this. It's like, if you're growing up in your home and you move away and you're living on your own, you have to understand how to be more independent and sustain yourself. And it really taught us a lot about how to operate in a tough competitive state that's got a lot of regulatory challenges. And I think we used those learnings to really inform how we expanded to new markets after that in a successful way.
So speaking of that, what would you say have been some of the biggest challenges you guys have faced in your expansion?
It's a good question. I think it's really finding the right talent and having stable teams. And that's some of the things we've done on the wage side that's really helped to attract that talent. Is back in 2016, we went to a starting wage of $13 an hour. We're obviously beyond that in a lot of the cities we operate in, as legislative increases started to catch up. But we enacted paid leave, parental leave, sick leave, paid parental and sick leave, other benefits, not just the wage rate, but really holistic benefits to be able to attract and retain the talent to execute what we do and to take care of our guests.
Sure. Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, this is a pretty tough time for labor today, and everybody's kind of on the tip of everybody's tongue is that's the biggest challenge. How have you sort of positioned your brand and your culture to rise above some of those challenges? And does that seem to be working?
Yeah, I think making that move back in 2016 really positioned that we built our business model with that in mind. And so as wage rate increases took hold in a lot of the cities we were operating in, we were already there or above that. And so it wasn't quite as significant an impact to us from an operating perspective. So we really want to be a place where people feel like they can grow both personally and professionally, grow themselves, not just in our restaurants, but beyond the four walls of our restaurants, and that this can be a career for them. Yeah. A lot of people are winding up in the restaurant industry and looking to make a career out of it. And we don't want it to just be a job for them. And we know that happy team members equal happy customers, which usually equals a happy business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned some of the markets that you're growing in: Austin, Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte. How would you define the Cava customer?
I think it's a customer who's really interested about what they're eating, and they're spending their calories like they spend their dollars, very judiciously.
Right.
They want to get bang for their buck. They want to make sure that they're getting a really flavorful meal, but a meal that they feel good about eating and they feel proud about eating. And they know that's served by people who are proud to serve them, and that's sourced from growers and ranchers that they can trust. And that is also good for their livelihood.
Yeah, because it's funny. You and I have talked about this before. Cava to me feels like a very sort of urban brand, and I think that's sort of the cool factor of what you guys have going on. And it just feels like something where it works really well in walking traffic, millennial-friendly neighborhoods. But the thing is that that's really not the only. I mean, that's obviously not the only neighborhoods you're in. You're in all kinds of neighborhoods across the country, and so does it having a brand that sort of has that vibe, taking it into the suburbs, like? Is it resonating? I mean, is that something that can work anywhere?
Yeah, actually a larger portion of our real estate is in the suburbs versus the cities. And that's what we get so excited about, is that we appeal, whether it's our balance of our dining room from a gender perspective, an age perspective, or an ethnicity perspective. It's awesome to see in the suburbs when you've got families and how much kids love hummus and falafel. And I remember when we opened a store, it was probably about 45 minutes outside DC, and people were coming up to us, thanking us, saying it's so nice to not have another pizza and burger
Right,
joint, because we all love pizza and burgers, but they have a lot of those options. What they don't have were options like ours, more adventurous Mediterranean food that could take them on a kind of a culinary experience, and then also really satisfy their dietary needs. I mean, I forget what the stat is, but a lot of people are in conflict with the way they want to eat and the way they are eating. And that's because it's a challenge, right? Because you're hungry again at 3:00, or you can't find something that fits your dietary restrictions. And that's been the beauty about what we do, is that we do that underpinned by our Mediterranean authority.
Yeah, and you guys I know are pretty committed to local sourcing and really committed to higher quality vendor partners. How do you keep that up as you expand? What is the learning curve there for you guys in building out the supply chain?
Yeah, we have an amazing food and beverage team, and getting out and building those relationships, whether it's Craig Rogers at Border Springs, one of our lamb shepherds here on the East Coast, or Dave Owing at Timeless Seeds, our beluga lentil provider out in Montana. And really, building partnerships like that we can then communicate to our guests, and that they have a real connection to where the food that we're serving is coming from, and that they appreciate the quality that's been put into it by our partners.
So over the last few years, when you talk about something like, say, local ingredients, that conversation has really evolved, right? I mean, because for a while it was, well, how close to the restaurant, is this coming from? And now I think this is, maybe evolved into more of a holistic, fresh kind of approach. But also, some restaurants have gotten in trouble for saying it's local sourced and it's not locally sourced. So I think that conversation's changed with the customer, and maybe their preferences have changed. But I'm wondering if you're seeing that at the restaurant level. Are you hearing from your customers that this sourcing piece of it is really important to them?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to the quality and the stewards of growing those ingredients, or the ranchers and how they're doing it. I think everybody here in DC understands, in the middle of February right now, you're not growing a lot of produce in this part of the country, right? So it's appreciating what we're sourcing, how we're sourcing it, and that's what we've always been about, really communicating the story behind the ingredients we're sourcing and the quality behind them. And we're mindful of sourcing locally in the summer when we can get cabbage from the Eastern Shore, we can get kale from just north of Baltimore 10 months out of the year, and really trying to work within those constraints as much as possible. We actually have started looking at some different greenhouse production for certain ingredients, but it's always been about trying to source the best ingredients for our guests, whether that's the Kalamata olives from our friends in the Manoli family over in Greece that the guys have a personal relationship with, and bring that to our guests. That's really been how we've looked at it, and I think our guests understand that and are really coming to us for that reason.
And talking about guest preferences, has been anything you guys have learned from them? Anything that you've heard from customers that you did evolve the business around?
That they've given us the confidence that they're not afraid to try more adventurous foods and that they want the bold flavors that we serve. I think that's been what's exciting and it's not just in the big coastal cities. As I said, we've gone to Charlotte and Raleigh and we're in Richmond, we're in Austin, Texas, going down to San Diego. I think we get requests all the time. I wish we could go to every city that we get the requests for, but this is happening throughout the middle of the country, not just on the coast, that people are seeking these more interesting, bolder foods.
Talking about those requests, franchising, was that ever something that you guys thought about doing, and why or why not, in terms of whether you thought about going that approach?
We never say never, but it's really not something that's in our plan or that we're focusing on. We've always been really focused on building the Cava brand, and for me personally, stewarding the origins of what the guys built the first restaurant on, and the passion of that. And so we just wanted to continue to grow that as much as we can and control it from a corporate perspective.
So recently I was looking at our 2016 40/40 list, which is, brands under 40 units, and Cava was on there, and I was struck by this because I'm like, wow, Cava was under 40 units just in 2016, and because you guys are about 75 locations now, right?
We opened our 75th in Chelsea and Manhattan yesterday.
Incredible, and so that's pretty fast growth. It's really remarkable how quickly you've been able to build this successful brand, and obviously I want to get into sort of the big splash that you made at the end of 2018 in acquiring Zoes, but even that aside, what was that process from 25, I think you were when you were on the 40/40, to 75? How do you get from there to here? What are the challenges you face in going in that process, and how can you keep up this rapid pace of growth?
It's great people, and it's building a great team. And I think that's something we did well focusing on early, was preparing for our growth ahead of the real accelerated growth. And so we, like I said, I think we were 12 restaurants, or I'm sorry, we were 8 restaurants at the end of 2014, and then we opened 12 and then 20. But it was in 2015 that we raised a significant amount of capital, but really built the team and fleshed out the resources we needed. And we'd really learned about our business and also started to build and set up our supply chain. But having a great talented team, whether it's here at Support Center on food and beverage, or our people and culture team, or our operations team in the field, and our restaurant leaders, it was putting that in place makes all the difference in the world and allowed us to scale like we did.
So let's get into the news from the fall, and we learned that Cava has acquired Zoes Kitchen, and hey, I can tell you in the media world, that was that was huge for us, because it just jumps off the page at you that this is a big deal, and this is a significant move in the fast casual world, and really the restaurant world in general, because to us it really meant, changes afoot, and you guys meant business, and this was really no joke. You guys are, you are out to teach the American customer about Greek and Mediterranean food. How did that all come about?
Yeah, so Ron Shaikh brought the opportunity to me, thinking about what if we were able to put together a group and then acquire the business and apply the capabilities that we had built at Cava on a larger scale, and really affect our mission at a larger scale, and bring the Zoes brand into the fold. And over the course of a few months, and it came to fruition, and just excited to have the opportunity to bring what we do to a much larger audience, literally coast to coast. So it's a tremendous opportunity for our team, and we're excited for it.
So Ron Shaikh, of course, the founder of Panera Bread. What are the lessons you can pick up from Ron now? And Ron is the chairman of the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So Ron obviously now has a say in the Cava business too, and I can only imagine how much wisdom you can tap into with that. What is that? What can you get from him?
Yeah, I joke. I call him Professor Shaikh. He's got a PhD in the restaurant industry as well as the consumer, and so to be able to lean on 36 years of experience, over 20 as a public CEO, is invaluable for me and our team to understand as we embark on building a national transformational business, what it's like and what it entails, and to have that context and that history alongside us is invaluable. Yeah.
And what about the Zoes Kitchen business to you was attractive? I mean, what was it that you wanted to leverage in making that acquisition?
Well, certainly the shared Mediterranean heritage was attractive to us, and it was another service model for us to express our Mediterranean origins. We thought that was really interesting in that we've never viewed ourselves strictly as a fast casual. We started as a full-service restaurant founded by one of our partners being a Chef Dimitri Moshovitis, and then evolved into selling our dips and spreads into grocery stores. So we've always viewed ourselves as a culinary brand. And then that expression manifested itself in the customized assembly line fast casual. And now we're able to incorporate a curated cafe model. And so we're able to reach our customers as well as serve our customers in a different need state, to do a different job for them that may be different than what we're doing in our assembly line fast casual, but still do it with our Mediterranean authority. And that got really exciting in how we could really amplify what we're doing as a culinary brand in a very different way over a tremendous geographic footprint.
Yeah. And Zoe's was up to about 300 locations, right, at the time of acquisition?
About 260.
260.
Yeah.
So obviously a huge reach from that brand. But as I understand, you guys are keeping these two brands separate. You're not just immediately flipping a switch and turning all the Zoes into Cavas, which is kind of funny because I think some of the headlines at the time of the acquisition from some consumer media publications was Cava now has over 300 locations, but, technicalities is not really true. So I know that in the media that these two brands are separate, but that Cava owns Zoe's. A lot of us in the restaurant industry know that. The customer doesn't necessarily know that. Do you plan to educate the customer about this joined heritage now that you guys have created? I
think first and foremost, what we want to do is listen to the Zoe's customer and listen to the Zoe's team. We've already been doing that. Myself and our COO, Dan Jones, and my partners, we did a road show back in December and went to 7 different cities and organized town halls with the operations teams and really understand the business at a ground level and get out and speak to the guests and understand how we can get Zoe's kind of back to the roots of where they came from and why people love them and take it from there. I think from a longer term time horizon, we're thinking about how these two brands live together and what's going to be the greatest proposition we can put forward for the guests at all of our restaurants.
Sure. And so there's no problem with, in Chapel Hill where I'm based, we have a Zoe's and a Cava now about 100 yards apart from each other.
Yep.
And I've told some people it almost feels like Zoe's primed the pump for when Cava opened because it sort of helped be this sort of stepping stone into here's what Mediterranean fast casual is all about. But that is something that works for you guys, having stores closely located next to each other?
Yeah, so we think about it, even in DC, we have our full-service restaurants. We have 5 full-service restaurants still that are the culinary roots of the brand, and we have our fast casual. But they're 2 very different experiences, and while there's some common themes and ingredients, we serve harissa at both. We have spicy lamb meatballs, but they come in very different ways. You might get spicy lamb meatball sliders at our full service. You might have them on your bowl or in your pita at the fast casual. And so you're not really making a choice between the two. And we think there's an opportunity to draw a clear distinction between the curated cafe model versus the customized assembly line model. And that there's an opportunity with these physical spaces on the cafe side to create much more of a dwell experience, more akin towards our full service experience versus the great convenience of and customization of our assembly line fast casual Cava today. So that's where we think there's a great opportunity to serve different needs for our guests with the different service models, but at the same time expressing the roots of what we do as a Mediterranean brand.
Yeah. In post-acquisition, are there plans to, take some time to figure out what this joint partnership looks like, or are you guys stepping on the pedal even more?
Yeah, we're moving. Like I said, we've been out in the field, meeting with everybody, understanding. We are working on some menu improvements and just putting our teams in a position on the Zoe side to be able to operate successfully and take care of our guests and put out great, flavorful, hot, fresh, fast food.
Yeah. And the Mediterranean category is starting to become a little bit more active. I mean, there's a lot more brands jumping in, especially Mediterranean fast casual. What's your impression of the space and just Americans embracing this category as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's a validation of the growth and the long-term opportunity, as I said earlier, not just in big coastal cities, but in all cities across this country, because it's a cuisine that really speaks to wellness and speaks to a way of life and an ability to not have to make compromises.
Right.
We like to call it healthy, no compromise food, or this idea of effortless wellness. Mm-hmm. You don't have to work to eat better at a Cava or at a Zoes through Mediterranean cuisine.
And talking about some of these markets that you have already grown into, and we were previously talking about sort of I see it as, you have your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, and I have seen as a lot of the fast casual movement that started really in tier 1 and tier 2 is starting to trickle down now into the smaller markets. Is that Cava's direction? Are you aiming for a more of a diversity of markets to grow into? And what do you think that says about today's restaurant industry, that more Americans are embracing a much higher quality fast casual experience?
I think it's exciting for everyone. I think it's exciting for the country as a whole when you think about health issues and obesity issues, that everyone has become more sensitive to what they're eating and what they're consuming, and they're willing to make sure, whether it costs a little bit more money, that they're willing to allocate more of their income towards that. I think when we think about where we want to go, if you look at where we are today, whether it's a Boston, New York, LA, DC, or a Charlotte, Richmond, Raleigh, Austin, we'll continue to do that. It speaks to our dining room that we can go in the suburbs or the city. We can go in a tier 1 or a tier 2, because this cuisine is really in demand in all these markets and
Sure.
and sought after. So
Yeah.
that's an exciting opportunity for us.
Here we are 8 years into the Cava story. And at the time, we were talking about, that was really the emergence of fast casual as a category. I mean, this was when you had a lot of brands pop up. And I was reflecting on how I was in DC back in 2015. And, we're talking about the story of some of these startup brands like Cava and Sweetgreen. And here all of you are expanding across the country and really exciting growth stories. But now, it's 2019 and, things have changed too. And you've also seen a lot more consolidation and certainly acquisitions, and even some brands folding up shop or closing some shops, and just gauging the temperature of the fast casual world. Is it saturated, or do you think that there's still room for growth and room for more brands?
I think it's always historically, and you've seen a lot of the data, restaurants as a whole have been overbuilt. I think there's a lot of choice out there, and consumers are discerning, and they're smart, and they're educated, and they're going to go to the people that are putting the best value out there for them and are offering the best guest experience. And so I don't think it's really different than past history, where there's opportunity for a lot of businesses, and that a lot of people enter the market to take advantage of that opportunity, and that the people who are really putting the best value out there for the consumer are the ones that wind up having the success.
Yeah. If you were to go back to 2010, 2011, or back when you joined the team and helping the guys out with the Cava brand, what would you tell yourself back then that you now know to prepare yourself for what has come?
Oh, I don't know. It's kind of funny. Sometimes I think if you know too much, you'd be like, oh, we can't do this. Like, it's impossible, right?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. So you have to be a little bit naive, I think, especially in the restaurant industry, because it certainly takes a village. I've got my 3 partners, and we've got an amazing team. So no, I believe everything happens for a reason. So it's just been having good people alongside to navigate those challenges, because you're going to have a challenge no matter who you are or what business you're in, and it's really about how you come together as a team to overcome those challenges.
And so let's say you and I sit down 8 years from now and we revisit this conversation. And I say, Brett, what would you tell yourself in 2019? Where do you see this growth going? Where do you think you'll be in 8, 10, 15 years?
Well, I think we have all the opportunity in the world. We've got tremendous supporters around the table with our board and our investors, as well as great people on our team. We got to continue to find great people to help grow us, and great people in our restaurants to take care of our guests. And if we do that, there's no reason we can't be, the national leading Mediterranean brand that everybody looks to when they want healthy, no compromise food.
Yeah. Well, before I let you go, Brett, I ask a lot of people this, which is, what would you tell an entrepreneur getting into this space today, opening up a restaurant, has a passion for what they're doing? What would you tell them in terms of encouraging them or giving them advice for what they should do in this category?
Yeah, I think it is a competitive category, no doubt. Restaurants as a whole. Ron made this comment to me. He's like, running restaurants is like dirt farming. it's tough, right? It's a hard business. And so making sure that you're doing your due diligence on it and setting yourself up for success and having the right people around you and taking care of your people, because you're not the one serving food every day. I mean, when we our first few restaurants, we were in there serving food every day. They kind of kicked me off the line now because I slow it down. But you need to take care of the people who are taking care of your guests. And if you're doing that, your customers are going to be happy. It's going to show through in the food. We always say, our culture is going to express itself through the food. And if our food is what we intend it to be, they're going to feel that passion, that joy, that excitement. And so take care of your people because they're the ones that take care of you. That's why we're sitting in what we call support center.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Awesome, Brett. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
All right, that was my conversation with Cava CEO Brett Schulman. Really excited to watch that brand as it continues to grow and just watch as it blazes its trail across America, bringing more authentic Mediterranean flavors to more Americans in the fast casual format. That's all we have today for today's episode of Fast Forward. Of course, I would love if you went to subscribe to this podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave some feedback. We would love to hear your thoughts, or shoot me an email, sam@qsrmagazine.com, to let me know what you think. Or if you have somebody that you know would be perfect for the show, would love to hear that as well. Of course, would also love for you to go to qsrmagazine.com to get all the news and insights on the quick service and fast casual restaurant industries that you need. You can subscribe to the magazine and also just access more information every day about this industry. With that, we are going to wrap up this episode, and we'll talk to you next time.